Cool, and I think we already have participants joining us. Amazing. So thank you all for joining us today. So we're just about to get started, but before I let our speakers dive into the discussion, I just wanted to say a few words about myself and what we do at GRI and why we created this event and research study about media for equity. So today is just me joining from GRI. My name is Diana Florescu, and I'm a co-founder at GRI Ventures. We are a corporate venture studio based in Romania. I'm coming from a background of startup acceleration and venture building, having led programs with Rainmaking and Startup Bootcamp before across the Nordics, India, and the US. And alongside my business partner, Stefan, we like to say that we are on a mission to address problems that matter, most importantly, and decrease the chances of startup failure and help large organizations to drive future growth with a focus particularly on Central Eastern Europe. And we believe we can actually achieve this by combining the agility of startups and the expertise of large organizations. And we are looking to co-invest and build new ventures together with our partners and leveraging particularly these lean startup principles, the experienced founders that we have in the market, and the vast resources of corporations. And for many large organizations and startups in the CE region, what we call corporate venture building and what we stand for, it's actually the new model of entrepreneurship. We see many, many more organizations looking to adopt this innovation model. And we are proud to also having worked with a lot of clients coming from all over the world, and they're really, really inspiring brands. So how is this relevant to media for equity and what we're going to be addressing in today's event? At their core, startup studios and media for equity investments, actually, they're trying to address one fundamental issue, and that's decreasing startup failures rate, while also maximizing growth for a lot of international TV stations and funds. So what does media for equity mean? How does that work? How can be applied successfully by both media founders and TV stations? These are some of the questions that we will address on today's panel discussion. And on that note, it's my pleasure to introduce Volker Moser, our co-founder at Romania Insider, who will be chairing today's panel conversation. Thank you all so much, and I hope you enjoy the event.
Thank you very much, Diana. Welcome to everyone, to our listeners, but also specifically to all the panel participants. My name is Volker Moser. As Diana said, I'm the co-founder of Romania Insider and City Compass. Romania Insider is the largest English media platform for news and features on Romania. So we've been there we're independent, objective and reliable, and we've been there since 2010. And I also help executives with coaching them, entrepreneurs and executives on new journeys. So that's basically what I do. But what is really enthusiastic today, I think, is that Romania specifically, but also the whole region now is more and more becoming attractive for many diverse industries and also players. And this, I think, wouldn't have happened 5-6 years ago. So this makes me in general very, very optimistic as a general setup, and specifically, obviously, the startup and the technological field, and Romania presenting itself to the world in a way that it sees that there are a lot of opportunities that also Romanian startups, but also the general ecosystem can deliver. And this makes me very happy since I've been dealing for a long time with it. Now, what is extremely exciting today is that we have a panel of media leaders from across Europe representing venture capitalists, media agency, and a very interesting startup. And we will talk about media for equity and how this model could be applied in Romania, but also in the whole region. Now, that is the main topic. We will find out what it is and how somehow the ecosystem looks like, and if there is only one ecosystem, or how if it's a split in Europe, and how it works. There are two things before we start, and I start to ask questions. First of all, my expectation, that's also what I always tell my clients if they host events with us, is I really want to make this interesting, and I really want you, dear readers and listeners, to benefit of this extremely exciting opportunity to ask relevant questions. So if you either are a startup or a TV channel or an investor or a media agency, now is your chance to actually from the beginning not only listen to what they say, but participate with your questions in the chat. So that's one thing. During the event, please do post the questions. We're going to try to cover them and make sure that you get practical advice for it. And the second thing is that I want to tell you is this is a recorded event. So I just wanted to mention this both GDPR-wise, but also that everybody knows that we are recording this. Yeah, I think I've never moderated such a very diverse panel with extremely exciting people from all over Europe, media leaders actually, and I think I've never had such a fancy background either. So what I would like you to do now, dear panelists, is I would like you to briefly introduce yourself and your industry and what you do, so that our listeners actually know who we're talking to before I then try to shed light into what you do exactly, because it's not that easy to understand for certain players and people. And so my kind request would be to introduce yourself briefly. I would kindly ask for the order Vinay, Marta, Dennis, and Chris. And Vinay, the floor would be yours.
Hello, I'm Vinay Solanki. I head up Channel 4 Ventures, which is the Media for Equity arm division of Channel 4. Channel 4 is a UK broadcaster, which is owned by the government. But unlike the BBC, we don't take any license fee. We make our money from advertising. I joined in 2015 to figure out if they could launch a Media for Equity operation, and we've now made about 30 investments, one of which is with Chris on this panel. And I've learned a great deal about Media for Equity, as well as like the challenges for media companies, the challenges that startups have as well. So I'm delighted to be here.
Thank you. Marta, do you want to continue?
Let me just unmute it. Hi, my name is Marta. I represent Publicis Group. I'm located in Warsaw, and I have a pleasure to manage NextTech Now. NextTech Now is an acceleration and scale-up program for a startup. We collaborate with startups which are developing their solution either in the communication field, commerce, or customer service, content production. My background is business development. I started as a B2B sales manager. Then for a few years, I was crafting partnership and commercial agreements between business organizations. And right now I'm supporting startups in their collaboration with our clients, which are major corporations. I appreciate your time and attention today.
Thank you so much, Marta.
Then I'll continue.
Yes,
Dennis
please,
Arling, the principal at German Media Pool. German Media Pool is the largest independent media for equity venture capital fund in Europe. As opposed to, for example, Channel 4 Ventures, we are an independent fund, meaning that we don't have one LP that we do media for equity deals for, but we work together with around 50 different media groups, mainly in Germany, because we started there, but by now also across Europe, in some other European countries. We've been established as a company as German Media Pool in 2011 and have done 34 media for equity deals so far. My background is in venture capital, so I've also learned all the media things along the way. Very happy to be here to be part of this panel.
Thank you very much, Dennis.
Hey there, I'm Chris Sheldrick, co-founder and CEO of What's 3 Words. We are a global address system, so we're a startup here, not a media owner, and we made a global address system by dividing the whole world into 3 meter squares and naming each one with 3 words from the dictionary. So something like table, chair, spoon is the name of one of our squares, just dictionary words, which provides a very simple way for anybody in the world to talk about any location. And we have an app called the What 3 Words app and a website. And we spend our time trying to get people, but also businesses, to use What 3 Words. And we've come across media for equity and also advertising on broadcast TV. In fact, when I met Vinay a year ago, and then we kind of first thought about it, we did a deal with Channel 4. More recently, we were ITV's first media for equity investment in the UK. But we've now been running several campaigns with Channel 4 so far and learnt a lot. So very pleased to be here.
Thank you so much, Chris. This is so exciting. I told my team yesterday about this event today, and just maybe briefly about you. I mean, they said, hey, I was I have What 3 Words as an app, and it saved me when I was saved in the mountains because they were looking for me. So
amazing.
I not only read about you, but now I actually got a practical
validation.
Yes.
It works.
So I'm extremely excited also about you being the representative of a really a well-known startup that actually showed a huge success with the media for equity investment in the beginning. That's the model we're going to discuss today. Now, Vinay, you mentioned you've been doing this since 2015. Can you maybe try to explain us what exactly is Media for Equity and what is your role as a general manager of Channel 4 Ventures?
Okay, so Media for Equity is very simply, you effectively get access or buy media just like any other buyer. And this is how it works in the UK with our model. And instead of paying for cash, you hand over a couple of bits of papers that say, I have entitlement to your shares. And then we dig around and try and see if we think that's a fair deal or not. And of course, we're trying to take a risk profile here. We're a lot like a VC fund. So my job is a lot like a VC fund. It's not media sales in the same way. We're looking to make equity return. I think we can be, creative, flexible, pragmatic. As a single LP corporate VC, I think we can be quite that's one of our main differentiators. I think like the main job is to find companies that can really benefit from awareness marketing. If you look at What 3 Words, that's a really interesting example. If I could talk about another one which is comparable, lots of the same issue I find is lots of companies don't invest in awareness marketing. It's a fear of being expensive. It's a fear of what's needed to track it. It's an underlying culture that suggests it may not work, even though the company has capital. And actually, what we find is it historically gets underinvested in, and that's what the main problem we solve. And I'd say that my main job is to go to the digital community, not just in the UK, but Europe, and we've done investments in the US, to the UK audience, where we try and solve that problem, which is the problem to say, hey, have you thought about awareness marketing? And do you want to spend a bit more? And then we look at the math and see if those bits of paper we're going to get are going to be worth it or not. Of course, we take a balanced portfolio point of view, and so we know that some investments may not work out. Mm-hmm. And so that's very similar to VC.
Okay, thank you. So you now said digital community, but in Gry's white paper, I read that it's not that simple. For some startups, it does work. And it seemed for Chris, What 3 Words, it did work. He's going to tell us later on why probably. But so maybe from your perspectives, Vinay, just to catch you on this. I mean, one thing is the business part you mentioned, that you said, okay, some of them don't want to do it because they think they're giving too many shares. But you stress the importance of awareness marketing. Now, is there a clear, I guess it is a B2C kind of approach, or can you advise more startups? What is an ideal startup for you? Is that industry, or does it depend on the market analysis? How do you pick them, and how could you describe this practically, and what could be an ideal?
It's extremely broad. It's everything in consumer. We think in digital consumer, which is getting the lion's share of the capital in venture capital. that there's a particular problem or bias against awareness marketing, which is a clear target for us. And of course, if we're targeting a segment that's getting disproportionate amounts of cash, fingers crossed you're picking off ones that will create value for your capital. But I'd say it's probably still broader than a lot of VCs. We look at businesses, we can look at all kinds of businesses there that might benefit. And we're ultimately a source of capital, which is a lot like VC, but it can be flexible and plays in the areas of venture debt does, etc.
I see. Okay. Now, maybe before we go to the next venture capitalist and compare the German system, and also later on see what a media agency actually, what their role is, maybe let's take it right to Chris. Now, you represent a startup and you've done this. What were the benefits for you, Chris, and why did you start initially with this? Was that basically in order to get a higher evaluation right away, and was this better than to try to collect regular cash, or why did you choose a media for equity deal, and how did it work? How did you practically approach Vinay in that case for the first deal?
Sure. So, I mean, we met Vinay, it was just over a year ago, and it was kind of interesting timing for us because What Three Words had become well known in the UK, and a lot of people had tried it for something. And we were doing a lot of digital advertising, which now that the tools are so sophisticated, you get a lot of benefits from it. From just even after a day of running a campaign, you kind of know what your costs and how it's going are. But after you do that for a while, you exhaust that channel, and it starts to become less effective. So just as we were introduced to Vinay, we started thinking about other channels like TV. And I think that the fact that it was media for equity was a really nice softener for us to go in, because we were raising an investment round anyway, and especially when you're kind of discussing with your existing investors how you're going to do these things, it's definitely softer when you can do it through an equity deal, so that you're not spending the cash that you've raised as such. And also just because the way these deals are structured, you generally get, as the startup, better rates than you would do if you were just coming in totally cold as a new sort of player in this field, without much negotiating leverage. So I guess all of those things considered, we thought it was good to start, and it was good timing for us. And then I guess what we found that we got from it was, it's very different because you can only really measure it right at the end of the month. Let's say you do a month as a minimum campaign, but you get this huge credibility that people still associate from TV advertising. And it's something that in the world of startups, everything's digital. But if you're selling to businesses like we are, there's a huge part of credibility that people come from going, I've seen you on the TV, and somebody's cousin has seen you on the TV, and you sort of get this wave of national awareness about what you're doing. And it just kind of deepens the presence of our brand from something, let's say, they might see on Facebook or Instagram advertising, which is kind of download and try the app. What you get on TV is a whole bunch of people's time, 30, 40 seconds, to be able to tell a much deeper story, where often on social, people are watching 2-3 seconds of your video before deciding to install. So it has definitely been very, very complementary for us to run alongside our digital campaigns. And we only signed up, I think, for 2 campaigns initially. We resubscribed, and we're running our 3rd one with Vinay at the moment. And then we'll be starting with ITV later this summer. But it's definitely been a really great experience for us.
Oh, thank you very much. So that means not only it helped you to grow, get more downloads, and get a higher evaluation, but at the same time, this awareness you were talking about when you're on TV, I guess it's also a bit hard to measure, but you definitely see that it's a very nice branding effect.
It is, but I think you've also got to choose your moment carefully. I mean, for What Three Words, we were already at the stage because we'd had a lot of awareness through other partners like emergency services in the UK, that we wanted to be in every single consumer's home in the UK. And we haven't always been able to afford that, or just been in that kind of league. You start small, and you want to target the niche communities who might try something new. But we're past that phase. We're now at the phase of this needs to be something that everyone in the UK knows about. and of course TV is ideal once you get to that stage. So I do think from the startup's perspective, you've got to time it right to go, actually, is that correct for us?
Okay. So I take this as a takeaway. It definitely worked for you, and because you had the target and you had a product that actually needed to be in any household, which is why this was a very interesting approach.
Yeah.
Very good. That's super exciting. Now I'm practically thinking, okay, how could this work in Central Eastern Europe? Because we're gonna also look at Germany, but also the part of the event's target is to somehow see if this could be a role model for CEE. Now, Marta, you're leading Next Tech now, and you're the general manager of Publicis Group in Poland. Now, this is Central Eastern Europe already, but not Romania, like in my case, yet. Can you tell us what is the role of a media agency, or how actually did you incorporate this as a media agency with your specific project in Poland? What do you do there, and how do you perceive this model for your country at first?
Okay, sure. So as I said, we are having the Next Tech now, which is an acceleration and scale-up program for startups. So we do not offer the founding, so we cannot offer the startups media for equity. We are working with the startups on the implementation of their products into our offerings. So we are serving the corporate clients, like from a different, let's say, our competences, which are not only the media houses, but also we serve the customers from the commerce, from the content production. So we have a different customers where we are serving them their different needs. And how we collaborate with the startups, we are looking for startups which are fulfilling their needs, and we are working through the acceleration and this scale-up process, which we have built it, by the practice. With the startups, we have been collaborating since few years. So we know already how we supposed to design our internal process in order to collaborate with our customers.
Mm-hmm. And do you have any startup in your program that actually has benefited of a media for equity specifically, where you as a media agency maybe brokered such a deal, or did that not happen yet?
Yes, we do have the startups. They are more, I would say, startups which are collaborating with the media partners. So the media inventory is a part of their deal. So it's just the startup is like a technological background, technological business partner for the media, either the broadcaster or the radio station, and they are just treating the startup as an open innovation. So they are dealing the media inventory as a part of their commercial deal.
Very interesting. So you're somehow in between a media agency and an investor, but still like a networker. Now,
so here we
Yeah.
Definitely, as a Next Tech now, we cannot be treated as a typical acceleration program, because as I mentioned, we are not offering the foundings. But what we can offer the startups, we have a limited spaces during the year. So we are having only few startups which we can accelerate. And by this acceleration, it means that we are scaling them up through our business network and our collaboration with our clients.
Okay, thank you. Now we have actually we have heard Binay from the UK. We have heard a counterpart, a startup that has benefited and had success, and told us how. Now we have entered a bit to the CEE region and heard a media agency, including an accelerator in this kind of ecosystem. And now I'm very curious about you, Dennis, because I know from also preparing the event that Germany is also a big market for media for equity. We have famous examples also with Zalando and many others. You are one of the major players, also similar to Vinay on the German market, but it works completely different. Could you shed a bit of light into this on what's the difference here? What are these different systems? Yeah.
Well, actually, I think the media for equity model in Germany does not work very different to the one in the UK. One of the differences in the model that we have particular as German Media Pool is that we're an independent fund. And that's, of course, different to a corporate fund like Channel 4. But there's also corporate funds like the one of ProSieben, a large German broadcaster that has a very similar model to Channel 4, that they have their own corporate media for equity venture capital fund, and they do media for equity investments with only their own inventory. And we, as an independent fund, have a lot of different LPs, a lot of different media partners that we can work together with, and we can offer the startups to basically pick and choose media from different media partners and put together a nice bouquet of TV, radio, out of home, or print media, whatever the startup might need.
But that sounds very similar to Marta, right? Or do I get this wrong? To the role of Marta in that ecosystem, who represents actually a media agency. Is that something that is actually true? What I say it? How I say it?
Yeah, to a certain degree, we are similar to an agency in the sense of that we are more a broker than the media owner. But we like to think about this more, that we are actually very similar to a traditional independent venture capital fund, right? That raises money, in this case cash, from different LPs and invests it, and is a single point of contact for the startups, because the startup doesn't want to raise cash from every single LP, but the venture capital fund management basically structures the deals and takes care of everything. And we basically provide this as a service for our media partners that are sometimes medium-sized media partners that for them it wouldn't be worth it to have their own media for equity activities. Sometimes they do have their own media for equity activities, and they also work with us kind of on top, and they do some deals by themselves, some deals through us. So yeah, in a sense, the role is a bit similar. But of course, the difference to a media group is the difference to a media agency is that we're not actually doing the planning of the media campaigns. And we actually work together with a lot of media agencies that our startups, the startups that we invest in, hire in order to take care of the media that we invest. Because what we try to do is to basically commoditize the asset that we invest in, right? If you invest cash, it's quite simple. €1 million is worth €1 million. And with airtime, it's a bit more tricky. So you have to commoditize this airtime somehow in order to also make it fair. And how it works basically is we give the startup a budget, and then they can use the budget and book whatever they want with the channels that we partner with. But how exactly they spend it, which exact time slot, which exact day, how they plan the campaign, they decide themselves, or they work together with a media agency in most cases, and the media agency helps them to do that.
Okay, so if I'm a startup and you consider me promising and I consider media for equity a real good deal, that means that if I have a media agency, you're going to help me to broker it, advise me on what could be a very good deal and media partner for me within your German model. But if I don't have that, you would also help me either by finding a media agency or by sometimes even giving me specific consulting on how you would do this media spend, right?
Exactly. So we, of course, help our startups more on the strategic level and not so much on the day-to-day operations, like most investors are doing. And we help them find a media agency, we help them find the right media agency. And most of the time, they start doing TV or offline media with the media agency. And later, some of them are actually bringing these competencies in-house, building their own team, and then doing it themselves. Or some of them also working with media agencies along the way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Very interesting. Now I'm seeing we're having a lot of chat questions already. So to everybody who is listening, rest assured that we will try to really structure these and incorporate them if they haven't been answered by the end of this call. Now let's maybe take it very practically. Vinay, when you did your investment with Chris or with Pinterest, obviously I also know Pinterest. I'm also interested in that. As I read, this is one of your famous investments. You said you represent Channel 4. That means you basically can only give the inventory from Channel 4, so that somehow limits you to the UK market, and you don't act as a consultant, but you actually have even a clearer, let's say, product and a clearer vision for you of the startups you invest in, right? How did that work exactly, for example, with Pinterest or with Chris? Did they approach you, or did you approach them? How would that work? What could we practically learn on, let's say, how to get an investor and a startup together? Because of what I understand is it can be a very successful model. It can be also apparently not so successful. But if I look at the amount of deals that we see in Europe, it seems media for equity still, according to this white paper of Gray, it's a limited number of deals that have happened in the last decade, right?
Yeah, look, it's a labor-intensive activity. Even we've got a team of 4 investment professionals, and it's a lot of work to complete. We maybe completed like on a run rate of like 7-8 deals in the last 12 months, and that means we probably looked at 12, 14, and that's totally relentless, I'd say, as a kind of work and activity. I'm sure Dennis will say the same. We track companies. My colleague Isabella went to a mobility conference. We talked about the thesis for What 3 Words. I thought it was a really viable thesis. Of course, I've been tracking What 3 Words like 3 or 4 years. I remember going to various meetings, knowing various investors saying, I love What 3 Words. And so we were really lucky to get into that discussion. And but if you're tracking the company and you know something about the company, hopefully that shows our intent or our knowledge. I think we're pretty knowledgeable on the consumer landscape. I saw from the outside what I felt was a marketing issue, which we see time and again. What Chris talked about earlier is gold, right? I'm so glad you're recording this, because like that is what we spend all our days. The problems that Chris outlined, we spend all our days thinking about those problems and trying to solve them. They're massive problems. And with Pinterest, I just one day got an extraordinary call from a contact of mine who worked at a Scandinavian broadcaster. It was like, Pinterest wants to talk to you, and I was like, all right. It led to a deal. It's an extraordinary situation. I think Pinterest had a lot of cash on the balance sheet, and it was a really interesting question as to why they were looking at media for equity as a model, but they certainly found a really interesting option for them. Again, the soft option to test something around marketing strategy. They're particularly interested in building out their male audiences. They didn't want to, they concentrate a lot of cash on product development. They weren't sure when the next raise is going to happen. There's a very clear kind of evaluation, and I'm glad we took the bet we did at the time. So,
at what stage was that, Vinay? I mean, I read in that white paper that usually it's in the seed stage or in Series A. Is that true, or was that in a later stage?
No, I don't think Pinterest is a relatively late stage where it was pre-IPO. It was like a couple of years pre-IPO, and we're still pre-IPO. Pinterest is very unusual, really. We're generally writing checks of between 1 and 5 million, but we're not constrained by traditional LP constraints. We can go a bit early. We sometimes have, and you can go up a bit later. I think when you're competing with very, very big checks, going into later stage companies, I think it's perhaps more challenging, or at least there's more risk. Is it a good use of our time? I wonder. Sometimes we're chasing the big allocations, and the negotiations can be, allocations are, competitive. So, and so the bigger and the more momentum an asset's got, people will talk to you. You get to see quite a lot of interesting deal flow, but is it, are they the best use of our time? It's a constant question I ask myself every day.
Mm-hmm. Now, if I were a TV channel owner, I would now think, be nice talking about competing with bigger checks, and then I would think, okay, but actually I'm just competing with my inventory. So now that leads me to the question, okay, if I'm now a TV channel or a big media broadcaster that actually really isn't really, I don't know anything about media for equity, and I'm somehow interested, but I somehow think, okay, I give my inventory, but I'm quite well booked. Now, question to you, Dennis, because you told me also in our prep talk that you're also active also in the Czech Republic, and you also have some CEE knowledge. Now, how could such a model be implemented in Romania or Eastern Europe? And maybe what, in your opinion, what are the roles of the TV channels or the big media broadcasters what could they be in such an ecosystem?
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, I think in our role that we're kind of in between the media group and the startups, we always try to assure that the interests of both sides are met, right? And we do a lot of evangelism for offline media, like Vinay also said in the beginning. But we also do the opposite, right? We do a lot of evangelism with the media groups in order to have them understand how startups work, how they track media, how they think about media, how they want everything to be KPI driven. Because of course, the startups of today, or at least some of them, will be the large customers in the next years, right? So for the media groups, these media for equity deals, of course, they also have a financial return, but I think it's also a strategic return that they have in having a closer relationship with these startups, really understanding how they think about media and how they how they book media, how they track it, how they optimize it, etc. And regarding the question about how this model works in different markets and especially in Central Eastern Europe, I think it makes sense to look at why or under which circumstances this model works best. And ideally, in order for media for equity to work, the media houses, let's say the TV channels, need to have some degree of spare inventory that they can allocate better through media for equity deals. And when I say spare inventory, I don't mean like leftover slots, but still TV stations that are 100 or 105% booked have always a bit more trouble in engaging in media for equity deals than media stations that are maybe just 90% booked. And in the end, media for equity is very similar to booking optimization of airplanes. You have different price points for different customers.
And opportunity costs, I guess, yeah.
And you have opportunity costs, exactly. And what we've seen, because we've actually, for About You, one of our largest investments, we have set up media for equity deals also outside of Germany, also in Czech Republic and some other countries in Central Eastern Europe. And what we saw is that it gets more difficult the more booked the TV stations are. And this is mainly the case in fast-growing economies. Very mature economy, like for example Germany, the economy doesn't grow as fast anymore, and also TV viewership and ad spend on TV is not growing very fast. But in some Central Eastern European countries, this is still growing very fast, and then it's harder to convince TV stations to join a media for equity deal, even though I think they should still do it, because you can get much better returns than just by straight out selling it. But if selling your media is so easy that you don't have to think about opening yourself up to a new model, then it's a bit more tricky.
Mm-hmm. So if I'm this TV channel owner from Romania, the case that I try to put up, then it would be, and I had growing business, meaning compared to the UK or Germany, actually my prices are actually still growing. Then it would depend if I somehow see strategic value in diversification of my business by getting more equity in promising startup and by investing the time and finding partners like Marta or like you to somehow help them within that ecosystem. So it would depend basically on how I see that, because I wouldn't be so incentivized because my opportunity cost would be very high, because the airtime I give is expensive and is real cash that I don't get, right?
That you don't get now, at least. Yes, exactly.
Okay, very interesting. So it's again about also market assessment and entrepreneurship in the end. Okay. Now, Chris, when you listened to this, you told me that What Three Words also plans to really go international and spend significant money in internationalization. Do you have some preferred regions for the next steps of What Three Words? And if yes, would you still see somehow media for equity? How would you judge these the different markets where you want to, as you like the model now? You somehow in the UK had a huge success, but you used one system, 2 different partners, I understood. How do you see the potential, for example, for Romania and Eastern Europe, but also for other regions, for your company specifically, knowing that this model really works well for you?
Yeah, it's a great point. So I guess the first thing that we proved, which we feel we have proved, is that TV works very well for What Three Words. Just the kind of app we are and the fact that it solves a very big need for a lot of the public. So TV works. So at that stage, we're now going, great. The UK is in a good place. We will continue in the UK, but we do want to scale up fast abroad. Some of the countries we're looking at are in Asia, but also we are very interested in Europe. And in fact, Dennis and I had a chat the other day. One of the really appealing things for us was that German media pool covers several countries. And just the logistics alone for a company of our relatively small size, if we can say, right, there's one partner can help us in several countries, that's a big win. Romania, I know, given today's talk, is a big interest as well. I mean, What Three Words is already localized into Romanian. We actually run all of our app development out of Romania as well, and we're very close to the country in many ways. So the product is literally ready to go. We have users in Romania, so it's something we would definitely consider with a Romanian TV channel if there was one interested. But also just elsewhere in Western, Central, as well as Eastern Europe. I think for us, it's all about, as we sit here now and work out what countries we're going to push into, a lot of that is down to the logistical bit of, is it quite simple for us to get set up with an advertising plan in that country? That is a big part of our considerations. And also, given that it seems like on the media for equity landscape, different countries and businesses are offering significant discounts. That's very compelling for us when we're sitting here going, well, look, what's the return on investment? Discounts are really compelling. I guess the downside for the startup is that you can't so easily change your plans like you can obviously with cash. But then there's a good trade-off there for us and the media owner to go, well, look, we're committing now to this, so they'll feel more comfortable with the discount. But yes, and certainly if any of the attendees here want to discuss with us, please drop me a note on LinkedIn or otherwise if you want to discuss, because this is the absolute right time that we're now planning which other countries we're moving into.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much for this hit, Chris. Actually, I would kindly ask all the panelists to put in your maybe LinkedIn profile or however you would like to be contacted, because I see here in the chat, I see a lot of people that write, hey, Marta, I would love to have your contact and how do you do this and this, to all of you. So for the ones of you that would like to actually get in touch with our attendees, kindly share whatever you feel like sharing in the chat to everyone throughout this webinar. And I think that could be a great way of connecting you to specifically interested either investors or startups. Marta, so it seems Nextech now is really working well in Poland. Is there a plan to open it up in other countries? I know it works in 3 countries right now, but now specifically, I'm thinking now, let's say I'm a Romanian startup, as there are many right now, and apparently, according to many investors, VCs that I talk specifically focused on Romania, they say that the market is so immature in the sense of even if I give them a lot of money, they can't really spend it because the structures are really very much in the beginning. Now that actually seems to me like a good case for an acceleration program like you do right now that somehow is already a proven concept in Poland, hosted by you as a media agency. How would you see media for equity in Romania? How could that work? Looking at the three different stakeholders that we have been discussing throughout the panel.
Mm-hmm. So firstly, the first part of your question. So Nextech now, it's not like a completely new idea. We are already cooperating with the startups few years. So we have like a sister branches in UK. So Nextech now is located in the London and also in Israel. But there are few, I would say, differentiations how we accelerate and how we cooperate with the startups. Definitely there is a business cases and a knowledge sharing. So if we do have a startup which we know that has succeeded in UK or in Tel Aviv or here in Warsaw, then we are just sharing, the examples around the whole Publicis group. So then it can be implemented into the other markets. Definitely, there are also like regions, like Poland is serving customers regionally. So we can scale the startup not only around the Polish market, but also around the other markets. Everything, it depends on the customer side. So if we are serving them locally or regionally or globally.
So let's say if I'm a Romanian startup and I'm already focusing with my product, let's say first on Eastern Europe, then it could be already an idea to get in touch with you to see if you can help with, let's say, your network and clients and that. But yes. So it also depends, it gets more complicated in a way, but on the other hand, it could also be an opportunity. But I'm just thinking now loudly. Let's say I'm a Romanian startup founder. I have this cool, it's the first time I hear of media for equity, or maybe I've read it somewhere about this Zalando case or the Pinterest case, and now I see it, I'm like, okay, now there are great UK examples, and there is a German guy with a very interesting VC that even covers my region. Now I'm thinking, okay, what are the next practical steps for me? How could this work for me if I have a startup in the B2C space? And so this is why I'm thinking loudly and trying to, let's say, make it as practical and get answers from all of you. I guess, for example, if I have a product that is mainly focused on the UK, now let's say if I take Romania Insider, we have most of our readers within Europe are from the UK, then I would probably even be interested if I needed that, or if I had a product, then this could be even interesting for Vinay, just because you serve the UK market and you're very, very strong there, right?
That's right, yeah. So I think any company, you'd consider investing in any company that needs, which is based overseas. And we made investments in Spain, US, which I talked about, Luxembourg, many like Sweden, etc. So like we would consider any, like, if you've got a growth company that's relevant and differentiated, that's relevant to UK audiences, then come and talk to us.
Okay.
Very open-minded.
Okay. And Dennis, what would be a real good thing for you after this webinar? I mean, how would you see the development of the region? I mean, you serve also specifically the Czech Republic, but also other countries. In an ideal world, how could we, after this panel, somehow try to build the ecosystem quicker? What would be good? What would be needed? Obviously, startups that are aware of it with the right, let's say, consumer mass market product, and ideally with the need for marketing awareness, I guess, or not only to understand it business wise, but also to get practical consulting. But then also TV channels that actually understand the model and work together with you, right?
Yeah, I think you already answered the question there a bit. So that's actually the two sides that are needed. And the third ingredient maybe is just time. I mean, in Germany, we started in 2011 with our fund, and the whole, I think the first Media for Equity fund in Germany was founded a year before. And in the beginning, we started with 3 media groups that were our LPs, and now it's 50 media groups. We've done 1 or 2 deals a year in the beginning, and now we do 5 to 6 deals a year. So really picking up speed, and it takes success cases that, you know, like the whole industry sees, that really pushed Germany forward. And I think next to the UK and Sweden and maybe Spain and Italy, Germany is definitely the country in Europe where Media for Equity is the most established. Other countries, like for example France, they didn't really have such a success case yet, and their Media for Equity is not that established. But in Germany, with for example Zalando, but also About You really see that Media for Equity can actually help startups reach the next level.
Sorry to interrupt you, Dennis, but that's really, now I always read that in France the startup scene is really booming, and they really also politically even invest more in good structures and in even less bureaucracy, etc. Why did that never happen in France? Or I mean, why? You know, because it's more of a grown market for startups, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think there needs to be the two sides, right? On the one side, there needs to be the startup ecosystem as a whole and the venture capital landscape. And on the other side, there needs to be also the media stations that join in and participate as. And it also starts in many other countries, but I think in the UK or Germany are just some years ahead when it comes to media companies also joining in on the value proposition of Media for Equity.
Okay. Now my last question, that actually it's not mine, it's from the chat before I hand over to Diana again, who joined us to finish up the webinar. There was a question about, hey, wouldn't that be also a model for niche portals or B2B portals? Are there any successful examples we're looking at Media for Equity not being used as a model for mass awareness, but rather for specific niche portals? I'm thinking.
I'm not aware of, if there are deals that may have been done on the side and ad hoc. I think ultimately it's very, very hard to get an allocation, and you need to have volume.
Yeah, I think
probably solving a problem as well. Where, you know, there may be a bias against certain marketing strategies, so that those two combine to create an opportunity in B2C. The cost of getting in, you know, the relative B2B cost, there's probably cash there. Yeah, there's no real model for B2B, I think.
Okay.
Of course, you know, consumer, you know, if it's B2B to C, consumer is the way you get to B2B to C, but that doesn't apply to all B2B.
Wise words. Well, I can't believe how quickly this almost hour was spent. To me, it was very, very interesting. And for my end, I would really like not only to thank Gry Group for their work, their white paper, and trying to actually shed light into the ecosystem of Media for Equity, but also the startup setup in Romania and Eastern Europe, but specifically to all the leaders here from different backgrounds. I'm super excited that I had the opportunity to actually get to know you, but also learn from you. Very interesting. And with this, I would like to thank also our participants from my end, and I would like to hand over to Diana for some finishing words.
Thanks so much, Volker, and thank you, everyone. I don't really know what to add. I mean, this has been done amazing, and for the first time, I just managed to take a step back and take a breather and just watch you guys. So I had a really kind of front seat just watching this, and I really, really enjoyed it. I think if there's one thing to highlight, perhaps we've seen us also in the research that we've done, Media for Equity actually has been gaining a lot of prominence in the last 2 decades, and I think there's always the question why is actually gaining more momentum now. And I think on one side, we see a lot of course, startups maturing. And of course, the UK has always been at the forefront. In Western countries, we see this more and more happening in Central Eastern Europe. That's why the question as well that you, Volker, you raised, whether maybe there's a possibility of doing it here in Central Eastern Europe. But then on the other hand, there's obviously a lot of disruption and a lot of digital technologies and cutting edge technologies coming to market that traditional media companies are facing a lot of pressure, right? So at the end of the day, media groups are large conglomerates, are large corporations. And it's interesting because media for equity could be one option or one investment model, right? And there are many, many companies, media groups as well, that are realizing there's a lot of potential to do innovation nowadays successfully and apply it effectively. And we've seen from Marta on today's panel that engaging with startups to create new pilots, new solutions, new products. There's one way. Vinay has been doing this for Channel 4 as a media for equity. He's been placing basic bets on media for equity investments. And from our side at Gry Ventures, one thing that I could probably add is that we've seen a lot of traction recently and way more interest from large corporations to actually go beyond non-core business models and look into external venture building. And what we're focusing on right now with the studio is actually working with large companies, could be media groups as well, in looking outside of what they're doing right now in their business, adjacent industries as well. Our belief is that, yes, you can partner with startups. That's a great starting point. Media investments as well, diversifying revenue. I think to move the needle or to move forward and just go beyond sort of incremental innovation, there must be, you need to start looking outside of your core business model. And for us, external venture building can be one way to fight against loss of market share or any growth stagnation that, it's inevitable. 52% of corporations nowadays, unfortunately, have disappeared. And the ones still with us, their average life tenure is actually decreasing and decreasing. So I think there's the bottom line of this, just to wrap up, is that no matter where you are on your innovation journey, I think it's great to consider engaging with startups. It's great to consider media for equity, or it's actually much better perhaps to look into a portfolio of investments. And the last thing I just want to share, back to what you said, Volker, is that today's panel discussion and everything that I just said right now, it is indeed informed by a research study we've done at Gry. We were super fortunate to have also Vinay and Dennis on today's panel to contribute to the white paper. There's case studies, there's interviews. There's also a guide for some of you listening that are representing media groups in Central Eastern Europe. So I do hope to actually continue this conversation outside of the event. You can find more information on our website at grygroup.com. The white paper is officially live, but of course we will come back with a copy tomorrow, just wrapping up the event with this recording as well and the research study. So thank you all so much for joining. I can't really thank you enough. It's been a really great conversation.
Thank you, Diana.
Thank you. And Volker, you've done an amazing job. Thank you so much.